Picture this. You are scrolling late at night through endless video thumbnails, each one promising a quick emotional hit, when suddenly one freezes your thumb mid-swipe, a weary woman behind a steaming food cart in some nameless, bustling city, and beside her, a small black boy wrapped in an oversized hoodie, his face half hidden, but his eyes carrying a weight no child should know. And the bold text screams, "Street vendor gave free food to silent black boy. The day he spoke changed her life." What grabs you first is not just the mystery of why this kid never talks, but the burning question of what single sentence from his mouth could flip an entire stranger's existence upside down. Could it be a plea for help, a secret too heavy to carry alone, or something so tender it melts years of hardness away? Drop in the comments right now. If you saw that boy hovering silently by your stall day after day, would you feed him for free, knowing your own pockets are tight? Or send him off with a polite refusal because charity starts at home? Your answer might reveal more about yourself than you think. And trust me, by the end of this story, you will revisit it with fresh eyes. This tale unfolds on a drizzly Tuesday afternoon amid the clamor of a crowded urban street market, where vendors hawk everything from fresh produce to knockoff purses under colorful tarps flapping in the wind. And the air thickens with the mingled scents of sizzling oils, ripe fruit, and exhaust from delivery trucks idling nearby. The woman at the center of it all is Grace Adeyemi, a resilient 43-year-old widow whose face bears the etched lines of quiet endurance. Her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun beneath a faded bandana, and her hands calloused from years of chopping vegetables and ladling stew into takeout containers. Grace Man's, a modest metal cart emblazoned with a simple chalkboard sign reading "Grace's Warm Meals, fresh, filling, made with care," positioned in a prime spot where foot traffic flows steadily, from office workers grabbing lunch to families weaving through after-school drop-offs. Grace's journey to this cart began over a decade ago when she left behind a life of modest comfort in search of better opportunities. Arriving in this sprawling city with big dreams of opening her own cozy eatery where patrons could linger over plates of her signature dishes like spicy vegetable stew, fluffy rice pilafs, and golden fried yams, reality proved harsher than anticipated, delivering blows in the form of her husband's unexpected illness that drained their savings on medical treatments, followed by dead-end jobs that paid barely enough for rent on a cramped one-bedroom apartment, until necessity forced her into this daily grind of rising at dawn to prep ingredients in a rented commercial kitchen, hauling heavy pots onto public transit, and setting up under unpredictable weather. Despite the toll, Grace finds solace in the rhythm of her work, greeting familiar faces like the burly construction foreman who always requests double portions of her peppered meat skewers, the elderly lady who savors her bean soups with a nod of approval, and the young mother whose toddler points eagerly at the sweet potato fritters each time they pass. On that particular Tuesday, as the midday rush peaks with shouts of orders and the clink of coins exchanging hands, Grace spots an unfamiliar figure lingering at the periphery of her setup, not bold enough to join the line, but close enough to peer intently at the bubbling contents of her largest pot. He appears no older than 8 or 9, swallowed by a gray hoodie that drapes over his slender frame like a protective cloak, the hood casting shadows across features that hint at recent tears, or perhaps just the persistent mist in the air. His sneakers bear the wear of constant use, soles thin and uppers frayed at the edges. Unlike the lively children who dart through the market chasing each other or begging for treats, this boy remains statue still, his gaze fixed unwaveringly on the steam rising from Grace's cart, as if it holds the answers to questions he cannot yet voice. Curiosity nudges Grace as the crowd thins momentarily, prompting her to lean over the counter with a welcoming tilt of her head and call out in her warm, melodic tone, softened by years of adaptation. "Hey, young man, everything okay over there? You have been eyeing my pots like they might dance if you stare long enough." The boy flinches slightly at the sound of her voice, his shoulders drawing inward, but rather than fleeing, he shuffles forward with deliberate slowness until he stands directly before her, close enough now for her to notice the faint tremble in his lower lip and the way his fingers twist the hem of his sleeve. Without a single utterance, he extends a small palm onto the counter, revealing a pitiful handful of change, 2 tarnished pennies, a dime, and a nickel, that together barely register as enough for a candy bar, let alone a proper nourishing meal. Grace studies the meager offering, her eyes flicking briefly to the prices scrawled on her board, where even the simplest side of plain grains costs several times more, and a familiar internal tug-of-war ensues between practicality and compassion. She recalls her own lean days when pride kept her from accepting handouts. Yet something in this child's mute desperation echoes the vulnerability she once shielded from the world. "What do they call you?" She probes softly, hoping to coax at least a name from him, but he fixes his attention on the ladle dipping into the stew pot, lips pressed firmly together as if words are a luxury he cannot afford. The quiet between them builds like gathering clouds, heavy with unspoken needs, until Grace exhales slowly and gathers his coins into the tin beside her register, deciding in that instant to extend grace where it seems most needed. With practiced efficiency, she fills a sturdy foam container with a heaping scoop of aromatic rice blended seamlessly with tender chunks of beef and vibrant bell peppers swimming in a rich tomato base, crowning it with wedges of crispy plantain that glisten under the market lights, and slides it across to him alongside a disposable utensil and napkin stack. "Take this and find a dry spot to enjoy it while it stays piping hot. Nothing worse than cold food pretending to comfort you." For the briefest moment, their gazes lock, and in his wide eyes, Grace glimpses a storm of emotions. Astonishment, mingled with wary relief, the kind worn by someone unaccustomed to unearned benevolence. He cradles the container protectively against his chest and retreats to a nearby concrete ledge, shielded partially by an overhanging shop awning, where he perches and devours the contents in deliberate, savoring bites, occasionally casting furtive glances toward the alleyways, branching off the main thoroughfare. As Grace resumes her duties, portioning meals for the returning stream of patrons and bantering lightly to keep spirits high, her thoughts drift back to the boy intermittently, noting how he devours every morsel without waste and wipes his mouth meticulously with the provided napkin before folding it neatly. She dismisses it as a fleeting encounter, one act of generosity amid countless transactions, convincing herself that he will blend into the city's vast anonymity like so many others. Yet, a subtle shift lingers in the air, an intuition that this silent visitor carries threads of a larger tapestry waiting to unravel. Before we dive deeper into what happens next, hit that comment section hard. What do you suspect keeps this boy so utterly wordless? And would his story make you rethink your own daily choices? Your thoughts fuel the conversation, so share boldly. The revelations ahead will test every guess you make. Days blend into one another at the street market, where the rhythm of haggling voices and rolling carts creates a symphony Grace knows by heart, each note signaling shifts from morning setup to afternoon peak and eventual wind down under fading daylight. The boy returns the very next afternoon, materializing at the same peripheral spot near the fruit stand. As if summoned by an invisible thread, his hoodie now sporting a fresh smudge of what looks like playground dirt across the sleeve, though he moves with the same deliberate caution that marked his first appearance. Grace spots him immediately this time, her hands pausing mid-stir in the pot of simmering lentils as a quiet recognition settles over her. Not quite surprise, but something closer to anticipation, laced with concern for what draws him back so predictably. She waits until the line ebbs before addressing him again, keeping her posture relaxed to avoid startling him into retreat. "Back already? That first plate must have agreed with you more than I hoped." No response comes, just that steady gaze fixed on the steam curling upward. But he approaches the counter without prompting and places down a slightly improved collection of coins quarters, this time mixed with a few more dimes. Enough perhaps for a modest side dish if she stretched the portions creatively. Grace hesitates only a fraction longer than before, her mind flashing to the dwindling stack of bills tucked inside her cart's locked compartment. Yet, she reaches for another container, layering in a mix of spiced chickpeas over couscous with a side of roasted eggplant slices that carry a hint of garlic and herb infusion. As she hands it over, she ventures another question, voice pitched low to blend with the surrounding market din. "Got a name I can call you by?" Makes it feel less like feeding a ghost. His eyes lift briefly to hers, flickering with something unreadable perhaps, conflict, or the edge of a buried memory, before dropping away. And he accepts the food with a minimal nod, retreating once more to his chosen perch, where he eats methodically, savoring each forkful, as though committing the flavors to permanent memory. Grace watches from the corner of her eye between serving slices of honey-glazed cornbread to a group of construction workers, noting how he positions himself with a clear view of both the market entrance and the narrower paths leading away, as if vigilance serves as his constant companion. Word of the boy's regular visits spread subtly among the other vendors over the following week, starting with casual observations that evolve into murmured discussions during slow hours when tarps are adjusted against sudden showers. Marlene, who sells handmade scarves from a nearby booth, sidles over one evening as Grace packs away her equipment, her voice carrying the gravelly timbre of long days outdoors. "That quiet kid again? You turning into the market's unofficial soup kitchen?" Grace chuckles softly to deflect, wiping down her surfaces with a rag that has seen better years. Just filling empty stomachs, same as always. No one thrives on an empty tank, kid, or grown-up. Marlene shakes her head, folding a vibrant scarf absent-mindedly. "Admirable, sure. But watch yourself, he drifts in like he is hiding from something bigger than lunch lines. Markets see all types." Her words plant a seed of unease that Grace brushes aside outwardly while securing her cart's locks. But that night, as she rides the crowded bus back to her modest apartment, the boy's silence replays in her thoughts alongside flashes of her own past struggles, when a single kind gesture from a stranger bridged the gap during her darkest stretches. Sleep comes fitfully, interrupted by dreams where empty containers multiply endlessly, and small hands reach out from shadows without sound. The pattern solidifies through rain-soaked mornings and crisp evenings alike. The boy arrives around the same hour each day, sometimes with scant change, other times with nothing visible in his palms. Yet Grace finds herself preparing an extra portion preemptively, wrapping it in foil when cash runs short, and pressing it into his grasp with a murmured assurance that needs no repayment beyond his presence. Conversations with him remain one-sided, her gentle probes about school or family met with averted gazes or minimal head shakes. Though she begins to catalog details, the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the way he favors his right foot slightly when walking, the oversized backpack that sags heavily against one shoulder, even when empty. Customers pick up on the routine too, with one regular, a middle-aged teacher named Javier, slipping an extra dollar into her tip jar one afternoon while commenting approvingly. "That boy looks at your food like it is the highlight of his day. Keep that heart of yours steady." Grace appreciates the sentiment, but feels the weight accumulating. Each free meal chipping away at her thin margins as ingredient costs climb and her savings account hovers perilously near zero. One particularly brisk morning, as frost lingers on the market pavement and her breath forms visible puffs, she discovers a tear in one of her main pot lids, forcing an unplanned expense that leaves her tallying receipts late into the night under the harsh glow of a single bulb. The boy shows up regardless, his cheeks flushed from the chill, and for the first time, he lingers a moment longer after eating, stacking his empty container neatly before drifting off, a gesture that strikes her as oddly adult in its consideration. Grace's interactions with fellow vendors deepen around this time, evolving from surface pleasantries to shared insights that reveal the market as a microcosm of hidden struggles. Old-timer Carlos, who peddles fresh herbs and spices, recounts similar encounters from decades past, his leathery hands gesturing emphatically. Kids like that carry burdens adults pretend not to see. Feed the body, maybe the rest follows eventually. His optimism bolsters her resolve. Yet, practical pressures mount when a notice arrives taped to her cart, demanding prompt payment for the monthly spot fee, or risk reassignment to a less favorable location tucked at the market's edge. She folds the paper carefully, determination hardening as she glances toward the spot where the boy typically appears, wondering if his routine holds clues to a larger narrative begging to surface. Subtle changes mark the boy's demeanor over these visits. A tentative straightening of his posture when Grace greets him by experimenting with nicknames like Champ or Little Man, the occasional flicker of a smile ghosting his lips at the scent of her daily specials, and once, when a gust scatters napkins across the ground, he darts forward instinctively to gather them before vanishing into the crowd. These fragments build a portrait of resilience amid unspoken hardship, prompting Grace to adjust her menu, subtly incorporating more filling legumes and grains to stretch portions without sacrificing taste, while her own fatigue deepens from double-checking inventory and negotiating with suppliers for delayed payments. Evenings find her journaling fragments of the day in a worn notebook, entries blending recipes with observations. Boy brought 2 quarters today, ate slower, watched others more intently. Scar seems fresher, somehow. As the second week draws to a close, a pivotal moment arrives during a lull when thunder rumbles distantly and customers scatter under umbrellas. The boy approaches not with coins, but with a small, crumpled drawing clutched in his fist, a simple sketch of a steaming bowl rendered in pencil on torn notebook paper, thrust forward shyly before he backs away. Grace unfolds it later, in the dim light of her kitchenette, tracing the careful lines with a fingertip, her chest tightening at the realization that her cart has become a fixed point in his otherwise fluid world. Before pressing play on what unfolds next, pause the video and type below. Has a stranger's quiet kindness ever shifted your path unexpectedly, or do you sense trouble brewing in this boy's unwavering silence? Your stories in the comments keep this journey alive. Share them now while the tension builds. Grace tucks the boy's pencil sketch into a pocket of her apron, its fragile edges curling slightly from the day's humidity, and carries it with her through the next morning's prep work, unfolding it occasionally to study the earnest strokes that capture steam rising from what could be one of her signature bowls. The market awakens under a pale sun filtering through high-rise silhouettes, vendors unfurling awnings with practiced snaps and arranging displays to lure early browsers, while Grace ignites her burners and stirs a fresh batch of creamy peanut stew laced with chunks of yam and spinach leaves plucked from Carlos's herb stall. Her thoughts circle the drawing like moths around a lantern, interpreting it as a breakthrough, however small, a non-verbal bridge spanning the gap between her generosity and his guarded world. When the boy materializes that afternoon, his backpack seems heavier than usual, straps biting into narrow shoulders, and Grace decides to test the waters by holding up the sketch with a gentle smile as he nears the counter. "You left this yesterday. Talented hands you have there want to trade it for something extra warm today?" His reaction unfolds in slow motion, eyes widening fractionally, a quick retreat of one step, then a hesitant advance as he scans the drawing and nods once, placing a single quarter beside the register with deliberate placement. Grace responds by filling his usual container not just with stew, but with a bonus of chewy flatbread torn fresh from the stack she keeps warming nearby, watching as he accepts it with fingers that linger a beat longer on the container's edge. Interactions evolve incrementally from there, with Grace introducing variations to coax responses, a thumbs up for flavor approval, a point to menu items when coins fall short, yet verbal silence persists like an uninvited guest, prompting her to observe more closely the subtle cues marking his arrivals. One overcast day, she notices a fresh scrape along his knuckle, red and raw against dark skin, and her nurturing instincts flare despite his swift concealment under the hoodie sleeve. She packages his meal with an additional apple sliced into wedges, murmuring encouragement about keeping strength up for whatever adventures fill his hours. He eats with the same precision always, but now pauses midway to scan the growing crowd, body tensing as if scenting an approaching shadow amid the laughter and bartering. Market camaraderie offers counterbalance to these mounting curiosities, as vendors convene during lulls to swap tales over shared thermoses of strong coffee brewed on portable stoves. Marlene shares a story of a runaway teen she once sheltered behind her scarf piles during a storm, while Javier recounts classroom silences shattered by unexpected confidences. Their experiences weaving a tapestry of cautionary wisdom that Grace absorbs without fully articulating her own unfolding saga. Practical hurdles persist, meanwhile, with a supplier hiking prices on staple grains due to seasonal shortages, forcing her to recalibrate recipes and stretch dwindling cash reserves through meticulous budgeting, scribbled on scrap paper during closing hours. The boy's reliability amid her chaos becomes oddly anchoring, his presence a quiet ritual that punctuates the unpredictability of daily tallies. Tension simmers beneath this fragile routine when, midway through the third week, a sharp gust topples a neighboring display of woven baskets, scattering them across the pavement and drawing a cluster of helpers, including the boy, who darts forward uncharacteristically to retrieve several before melting back into his vantage point. Grace calls out thanks over the din, but he responds only with a fleeting wave, the first voluntary gesture beyond acceptance of food, fueling her resolve to deepen the connection without pressure. Evenings bring introspection as she soaks weary feet in a basin of warm, salted water, replaying moments like the way his eyes brighten at the sight of her caramelized onion topping, or dim when distant sirens wail through the streets. A turning point arrives on a humid evening when thunderheads gather early, thinning crowds and leaving stalls shrouded in premature twilight. The boy hurries in later than usual, hood damp and clinging to his forehead, clutching his backpack with white-knuckled grip as if it holds fragile cargo. Grace serves his portion swiftly, adding a thermos cap of ginger tea against the chill, and as he settles on his ledge, a sudden downpour erupts, trapping them both under the market's communal overhang while rivulets cascade nearby. She seizes the rare proximity to venture deeper, settling on an upturned crate, a respectful distance away, with her own mug of tea. Rough weather out there. Hope you have a dry place to head once it clears. Minutes stretch, with only rain's percussion answering, until he shifts position and murmurs something inaudible, drowned by a thunderclap. Grace leans forward instinctively. Sorry, love. Did not catch that. What did you say? He hesitates, glancing at the torrent as if it mirrors inner turmoil, then repeats in a voice so soft it barely disrupts the downpour. It smells like home. The words land like pebbles in still water, rippling through Grace with profound simplicity, evoking her own memories of familial kitchens alive with similar aromas, and she nods slowly to honor the vulnerability without demanding more. That is the best anyone can ask for from food. Glad it brings back good pieces for you. He finishes eating under the deluge cover, stacking his container with precision before slipping away as skies lighten fractionally, leaving Grace to ponder the breakthrough's implications while packing her gear with renewed purpose. Word of the exchange trickles to other vendors overnight, sparking a wave of quiet support. Carlos slips her a bundle of discounted spices. Marlene drapes a spare tarp over her cart for weatherproofing, bolstering her through a cascade of unexpected repair costs. When her smaller burner sputters and dies mid-shift, the boy's sparse utterance lingers as a beacon, prompting Grace to experiment with nostalgic flavors like coconut-infused grains and herb-roasted roots, each bowl a silent invitation for further revelations. Challenges compound as the month progresses, with a rival vendor eyeing her prime spot and whispers of upcoming fee increases circulating among the booths, yet Grace channels focus into these interactions, noting evolutions like the boy's growing ease and lingering post-meal to watch her clean surfaces, or assist by holding a ladle during busy rushes. One vibrant afternoon, amid a festival-like swell of visitors, drawn by live music drifting from a nearby stage, he even passes her a fallen spoon without prompting, their fingers brushing in the exchange and eliciting a shared moment of eye contact, pregnant with unspoken understanding. Customers remark on the market mascot, tossing extra tips her way that ease immediate pressures, transforming her cart into a nexus of communal warmth. As patterns solidify into tentative trust, Grace begins leaving small notes tucked under container rims. Simple encouragement, like "stay strong today," or drawings mirroring his sketch, met initially with puzzled glances, but eventually careful folding into his backpack. Fatigue wars, with fulfillment during solitary evenings, where she weighs the emotional investment against financial precarity, yet the boy's gradual thawing reaffirms her belief in incremental bonds forged through consistent care. Before advancing to the moment that reshapes trajectories, reflect in the comments. What single phrase from a near stranger has lingered in your memory longest? And does this boy's emerging voice hint at joy or hidden pain ahead? Your insights sharpen the path forward. Type them now. Grace finds herself anticipating the boy's arrival with a mix of eagerness and apprehension. Her mornings now, starting with an extra pot simmering on the stove to ensure his portion waits, ready amid the breakfast rush of commuters, clutching thermoses, and hurried families. The market pulses with renewed energy as autumn edges closer, leaves skittering across pavement like whispered secrets, while vendors layer on heavier jackets and swap tales of impending cooler spells. She refines her offerings based on subtle cues from him, a preference for tangier sauces noted from quicker bites, an affinity for nutty grains observed in slower savoring, turning each meal into a dialogue without words that deepens their unspoken rhythm. One crisp morning, as fog clings low to the ground and muffles distant traffic hums, the boy appears earlier than usual, his posture more slumped than before, and a faint shadow bruising beneath one eye that he fails to hide fully under the hoodie brim. Grace's stomach knots at the sight, but she maintains steady hands while assembling his container with fluffy millet, blended seamlessly with savory lentils and wilted greens, slipping in a banana for quick energy without comment that might spook him. He accepts it with a murmur of what sounds like appreciation, though still too faint to parse clearly, and lingers afterward to watch her flip skewers on the grill, the flames casting flickering warmth across his features softened by emerging trust. Vendor alliances tighten around Grace during this phase, evolving into a protective network where glances signal potential trouble and shared resources buffer lean days. Javier drops by with classroom anecdotes about quiet students who bloom under patient attention, while Carlos experiments with spice blends tailored to her recipes, insisting they elevate her stews to irresistible levels. Financial strains persist relentlessly, manifesting in a leaky cart awning that demands replacement and a stack of utility notices piling on her narrow counter at home. Yet small windfalls emerge too, like a corporate group ordering platters for an impromptu team event, their generous tips providing breathing room amid tightening belts. The boy becomes her anchor in chaos, his predictable presence a reminder that impact ripples beyond balance sheets. Subtle escalations mark his visits now. On a breezy afternoon when wind whips tarps violently, he helps secure her loose flap without being asked. Nimble fingers working knots, Grace taught him indirectly through demonstration, earning nods from nearby sellers who dub him her little apprentice. She responds by carving out moments for gentle engagement, asking open questions about favorite colors or weather preferences during lulls, rewarded occasionally by head tilts or finger points that feel like victories in a prolonged campaign. Evenings bring her to community centers where she volunteers sporadically, absorbing stories from others touched by similar encounters that validate her instincts without revealing specifics about her charge. Pressure builds externally when market management announces stricter enforcement on space allocations, prompting meetings where vendors voice frustrations over rising costs and favoritism toward larger operations. Grace speaks up measuredly, advocating for established small-timers like herself while calculating risks of relocation that could shatter her fragile routine. Internally, doubts creep as she notices worsening signs on the boy's faded marks resembling fingerprints on his arm one day. A limp he disguises poorly, the next, urging her to research local support lines discreetly on a borrowed library computer, torn between intervention and preserving the sanctuary her cart provides. His drawing habit persists, with new sketches appearing sporadically. A steaming pot one day, her silhouette ladling stew the next, each pressed into her palm like talismans of gratitude. A pivotal exchange unfolds during a golden hour slowdown, sunlight slanting long across stalls as crowds thin toward evening. The boy approaches with a backpack zipper stuck halfway, frustration etching his brow until Grace kneels to assist, freeing it smoothly to reveal a carefully wrapped muffin inside store-bought but offered with solemn intent. "For you," he whispers, voice cracking on the edges, the first complete phrase directed at her that pierces the veil of habitual quiet, sending a rush of emotion through her chest as she accepts it with thanks that convey deeper meaning. They share the treat in companionable silence afterward, breaking it into pieces while watching pigeons strut nearby, the moment cementing a bond, fragile yet profound. Word spreads organically through the market grapevine, vendors toasting her patience with extra produce bundles and customers inquiring after the quiet helper boosting sales enough to cover awning repairs and stock fuller pots. Grace invests in sturdier containers for him, labeling them faintly with encouraging notes that evolve into simple exchanges. His reply sketches tucked back the next day, progressing from objects to emotions rendered in basic lines. Nights find her poring over these, tracing progress in shy smiles depicted or storm clouds parting, her own loneliness easing incrementally as purpose sharpens amid persistent hardships, like a stubborn cough from damp mornings and supplier delays stretching patience thin. External forces intrude gradually when unfamiliar adults begin circling the market periphery during peak hours, lingering too long near fruit displays or feigning interest in trinkets without buying, their gazes occasionally sweeping toward Grace's cart with unsettling focus. She dismisses it initially as paranoia fueled by fatigue, redoubling efforts to shield the boy by positioning him behind her serving area during rushes or distracting with engaging tasks like peeling vegetables under supervision. Marlene notices first, pulling her aside during cleanup to warn about types who reclaim lost property none too gently, her tone laced with veteran caution that prompts Grace to heighten vigilance without alarming her young companion. Climactic tension brews on a turbulent evening when lightning flickers prematurely and crowds bolt for cover, leaving stalls battered by sudden gusts. The boy arrives drenched and shivering, collapsing onto his ledge with uncharacteristic abandon, as Grace drapes a spare towel over his shoulders and heats broth swiftly. Amid the storm's roar, he leans close during a thunderous peal and breathes, "They look for me here." The admission laden with fear that galvanizes her protective core, prompting a vow whispered back that her spot remains safe harbor. As rain hammers relentlessly, they huddle together, sharing warmth and silence that speaks volumes, forging resilience against encroaching threats. Grace navigates ensuing days with heightened awareness, coordinating subtly with vendors to signal dangers via coded phrases or repositioned signs, while channeling anxieties into enriched meals that nourish body and spirit alike. The boy's disclosures trickle forth sparingly, hints of raised voices at night, empty cupboards prompting wanderings, each fragment deepening her commitment despite risks to her livelihood from prolonged distractions. Community threads weave tighter, with Javier offering contacts at youth services and Carlos fortifying her resolve through proverbs of endurance, transforming isolated struggles into collective strength. Before the narrative pivots toward revelation's edge, engage below. What boundary would you draw between helping a vulnerable child and safeguarding your own stability? And does this boy's budding openness signal safety or summon danger? Your perspectives illuminate shadows ahead. Voice them urgently in comments as stakes rise. Grace awakens each dawn with the boy's halting confession echoing in her ears. That simple phrase about searchers drawn to her cart, reshaping her vigilance into a sharpened instinct that scans every new face weaving through the market throng. She adjusts her setup subtly, angling the serving counter to create a natural barrier where the boy can stand shielded from casual glances, while she plates generous helpings of barley, pilaf, studded with caramelized carrots and tender okra pods glistening in herb oil. Vendors pick up on her altered demeanor without needing explanation, their nods conveying solidarity as Marlene repositions her scarf racks to block sightlines and Carlos stations his herb trays, strategically to funnel foot traffic away from vulnerable spots. The boy arrives daily still, though now with a wariness that mirrors her own, slipping in through side paths and melting into shadows until the moment feels clear for approach. Grace greets him with coded warmth, her voice layering normalcy over urgency as she fills his container with hearty mung bean soup, swirled with coconut cream and scattered pumpkin seeds for crunch. He reciprocates with evolved sketches, figures huddled under shelter now, or hands exchanging bowls amid stylized storms tucked into her palm, alongside meager coins or shared silently when funds run dry. Each exchange fortifying their alliance against unseen pressures. Customers sense the undercurrent too, their chatter turning protective, with extra orders placed deliberately to prolong his cover amid the bustle. Market life surges forward despite tensions, with the Harvest Festival injecting vibrancy through strung lights and acoustic performers, drawing families who linger longer and tip more generously, easing Grace's ledger temporarily as she juggles expanded demand alongside discreet monitoring. Javier slips her a pamphlet from a local advocacy group during a quiet handover, its pages outlining steps for supporting at-risk youth without overstepping boundaries, which she studies nightly by lamplight while brewing tea from scavenged ginger scraps. The boy notices her reading one evening and points curiously, prompting her to explain in broad strokes about helpers who ensure safe paths, earning a solemn nod that lingers like approval from a tiny sentinel. External strains intensify when a stern official from market oversight circles during inspection rounds, clipboard in hand, and questions probing about occupancy and auxiliary users, his gaze narrowing on the boy stacking napkins nearby, before moving on with a yellow sticky note affixed to her cart signaling compliance review. Grace counters by documenting every transaction meticulously, transforming her notebook into a ledger of legitimacy that counters potential disruptions while channeling worries into innovative dishes like quinoa-stuffed bell peppers, drizzled with tahini yogurt for sustained energy. Fellow sellers rally implicitly, with one loaning a partition screen and another sharing stories of past audits, weathered through unity, their collective front buffering isolation. The boy's disclosures expand in fragments during sheltered moments, whispered over shared bites of sesame flatbread, or while rain patters overhead. He mentions footsteps pacing outside windows at night, cupboards bare enough to echo, and voices rising sharp enough to hush his own. Details delivered in bursts that clench her heart, yet steel her determination. She responds with affirmations wrapped in action-fortified portions that pack nutrition for longer absences. Small charms, like polished stones from her childhood, slipped into his backpack for comfort, building a toolkit of quiet empowerment. Evenings bring her to reflection, weighing the joy of his tentative laughs at bubbling pots against fears of escalation, her sleep fractured by visions of shadowed figures encroaching closer. A cascade of support materializes organically when regulars learn fragments through vendor whispers, manifesting in donated blankets folded discreetly or canned goods stacked behind her pots for redistribution. A young barista from the corner cafe begins timing coffee runs to coincide with his visits, offering milky cups that coax rare smiles from him. Grace coordinates these gestures seamlessly, her cart evolving into a hub of disguised aid where normalcy cloaks deeper purpose, sales climbing as word of her flavorful resilience draws newcomers who savor not just meals, but the aura of compassion permeating the air. Practical hurdles persist, a flickering burner demanding rewiring, fluctuating produce prices, squeezing margins, yet communal backing transforms burdens into shared loads. Tension crests during a bustling weekend swell when the unfamiliar adults reappear more boldly. One loitering near produce bins with a phone pressed to ear, while another pretends to haggle over fabrics mere feet from Grace's position. The boy freezes mid-bite upon sighting them, container trembling until she steps forward casually to block the view and engage them in sales patter about daily specials. They depart after cursory glances, but the encounter leaves residual shivers, prompting Grace to confer urgently with Marlene, post-closing under cover of packing crates. "Keep eyes open tomorrow. They move like they own the shadows," her friend advises, pressing a whistle keychain into Grace's hand for emergencies. Subsequent days unfold with calculated caution, Grace teaching the boy subtle signals, a tapped spoon for clear paths, a folded napkin for incoming risks that he masters swiftly, their partnership maturing into intuitive synchrony amid the market's ceaseless pulse. He contributes actively now, wiping surfaces during lulls or fetching water jugs from the communal tap, earning affectionate nicknames from sellers that elicit shy ducks of his head. Grace invests scant free time in outreach, attending a virtual workshop on recognizing distress signals in children, its insights sharpening her observations of his flinching at loud horns or preference for corner seating. Climactic pressure mounts on a fog-shrouded evening when sirens pierce the dusk earlier than usual, drawing official vehicles that idle near the market entrance while lights flash ominously. The boy arrives pale and breathless, backpack clutched like a lifeline as he whispers urgently about them coming closer today, his voice gaining strength laced with desperation. Grace shields him behind stacked crates, serving customers with feigned calm while heart races, and as the vehicles depart without incident, she exhales shakily, offering him a mug of chamomile infusion, sweetened with scavenged honey. Their shared silence afterward pulses with unspoken pact, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder in reassurance that anchors them both. Community tendrils extend further, with Javier connecting her to a counselor who agrees to casual drop-ins disguised as recipe chats, providing neutral space for the boy to acclimate without pressure. Carlos crafts a small herb pouch as a talisman, insisting its scents ward off ill winds. Grace navigates her dual existence adeptly, balancing commerce with care as platters of roasted root vegetables and spiced chickpeas fuel not just bodies, but budding hope. Doubts surface in solitary moments. Am I overreaching, endangering us both? Yet, his growing ease, like humming faintly while peeling garlic, reaffirms the path. Before thresholds cross into irreversible change, ponder aloud in comments. How far would you extend sanctuary to a child, signaling silent pleas? And what red flags in this unfolding watchfulness demand immediate action? Your voices guide the turning point ahead. Declare them boldly, now, as whispers amplify. Grace feels the weight of accumulated vigilance, pressing heavier with each passing day. Her mornings, now layered with strategic planning, alongside the familiar ritual of chopping onions and simmering broths, rich with turmeric and tender morsels of fish, simmered gently until flaky. The market hums under a canopy of lengthening shadows as cooler weather settles in, prompting vendors to cluster closer around portable heaters during lulls and share thermoses of spiced cider that warm hands and spirits alike. She refines her signals with the boy further, introducing a double tap on the counter for all clear moments and a subtle head tilt toward the alley for quick exits, their non-verbal code evolving into a seamless language born of necessity and trust. He slips in one overcast afternoon, carrying visible tension in rigid limbs, his usual sketch replaced by a crumpled paper scrap, bearing hasty scrawls of stick figures fleeing jagged shapes. Thrust toward her with trembling insistence before he ducks behind the counter to help sort cutlery. Grace smooths it out later, amid serving lines of quinoa salads tossed with feta crumbles and sun-dried tomatoes, her mind decoding the imagery as escalating peril, while she maintains outward poise for patrons praising her latest fusion of grains and grilled zucchini spears. Marlene confirms sightings of the lurking pair during her scarf sales, describing their methodical sweeps as predatory patterns that cycle predictably, urging Grace to document timestamps in her ledger for potential reports. Practical innovations sustain her through mounting duress, like batch prepping durable wraps of black-eyed peas blended with collard greens and cornbread crumbles for the boy to pocket discreetly, ensuring sustenance during prolonged evasions. She barters with Carlos for bulk herbs that stretch flavors affordably, transforming scarcity into abundance through creative pairings of lentils and roasted beets drizzled in balsamic reduction. Customers contribute unwittingly to the camouflage, their enthusiastic endorsements of her evolving menu. Think millet cakes topped with avocado crema, drawing steady traffic that conceals deeper dynamics, while Javier's youth advocate contact schedules an informal meetup framed as a market tour to assess situations calmly. The boys' revelations trickle more freely now during hushed interludes, delivered over mugs of cinnamon-spiced oat milk or while rain drums softly overhead. He describes locked doors, rattling late evenings, sparse suppers interrupted by arguments that send him wandering, and a persistent ache in his belly that her meals alone soothe reliably. Grace listens without judgment, offering affirmations woven into tasks like rolling dough for her signature herb biscuits, her presence a steady harbor that coaxes incremental details without coercion, each shared piece knitting their fates tighter amid swirling uncertainties. Nights bring her to measured action, compiling notes for the counselor with anonymized entries that chronicle patterns without exposing identities prematurely. Community fortifications grow more overt when a rotating watch forms among trusted sellers, casual repositionings of carts, and deliberate dawdles, creating buffer zones around Grace's operation during high-risk windows. A newcomer fruit vendor joins after overhearing fragments, donating surplus mangoes that Grace purees into nutrient-packed smoothies blended with yogurt and chia seeds for the boys' benefit. Sales flourish paradoxically from this solidarity, platters of stuffed grape leaves and eggplant dips vanishing swiftly as word spreads of her resilient corner amid the stalls. Tips accumulating enough to fund a reinforced cart lock and emergency blanket stash. Doubts gnaw occasionally, have I woven myself too deeply into shadows, not mine? Yet his fleeting grins, while sampling fresh batches, dispel them swiftly. Escalation arrives abruptly, on a blustery midday, when the adults materialize openly, one stationing near Javier's book table with feigned browsing, while the other drifts closer to Grace's perimeter. Smartphone angled suspiciously. The boy halts mid-approach upon spotting them, pivoting sharply until her tapped spoon reassures him into shadowed cover. She engages the nearer figure with sales chatter about daily specials of farro pilaf, studded with dried cranberries and walnuts, her tone disarming enough to deflect scrutiny while heart hammers beneath composed facade. The pair eventually withdrawing after fruitless hovering that leaves residual chill. Post-incident huddle with Marlene yields agreement to escalate documentation. Photos snapped discreetly on borrowed phones, time-stamped alongside behavioral logs. Grace channels adrenaline into productivity, experimenting with slow-cooked, tagine-inspired stews of chickpeas and preserved lemon over couscous that comfort deeply. Portions calibrated precisely for the boys' needs during uncertain stretches. She confides partially in the counselor during their walkabout, gaining guidance on non-confrontational observation techniques that align with legal boundaries, empowering her to act decisively yet safely. The boy mirrors her resolve, assisting proactively by monitoring alleys from vantage points or relaying coded warnings through napkin folds, their partnership maturing into mutual guardianship that transcends age gaps gracefully. Storm clouds gather literally and figuratively one twilight hour when distant rumbles precede sheets of rain that empty stalls prematurely, the boy dashing in, sodden and wide-eyed with backpack sodden through. Grace ushers him under full shelter, toweling his hair gently while heating vegetable broth infused with lemongrass and ginger root for internal warmth. Amid the deluge's isolation, he volunteers fuller context, unprompted names, withheld but dynamics painted of caregivers fraying under strains that spill onto him, prompting escapes to her reliable light details that crystallize her protective imperative without specifics demanding immediate upheaval. She responds with enveloping calm, sharing stories from her past of overcoming voids through persistent care, forging solidarity in vulnerability. Vendor Network activates fully post-storm, pooling resources for a communal fund that covers Grace's next fee installment and outfits the boy in dry layers sourced from donations. Carlos inscribes protective runes on a wooden spoon passed to her as talisman, insisting ancestral wisdom bolsters modern efforts. Grace repays through enriched community platters of polenta rounds topped with ratatouille confit, fostering gratitude cycles that insulate against encroaching threats, while her personal reserves stabilize incrementally. Introspection surfaces in quiet intervals, balancing fulfillment from his budding chatter queries about ingredient origins, now with pragmatic fears of backlash rippling through her livelihood. Pivotal confrontation looms when official lights flash nearer during an evening rush. Patrol units canvassing for information on a reported youth amid unrelated calls. Grace positions the boy in deepest shadow, serving lines with amplified cheer while deflecting casual inquiries with vague assurances of transient visitors only. Tension dissipates as vehicles roll onward, but the proximity accelerates her resolve, prompting a late-night call to the counselor outlining readiness for structured support without delay. Their alliance solidifies through this crucible, small hands clasping hers briefly in thanks that convey oceans of reliance. As narratives converge toward utterance's power, interrogate in comments, what tipping threshold justifies bridging from quiet aid to formal intervention for a child's sake? And how does this duo's synergy hint at triumphs or trials imminent? Your deliberations propel us nearer revelation. Articulate them vividly below. Grace carries the echoes of near misses like invisible scars. Her days now a delicate dance of preparation and presence, as she layers pots with fragrant mixtures of bulgur wheat simmered alongside chunks of lamb and apricots that swell sweetly in the broth. The market adapts to seasonal shifts, with hearty fare dominating displays, pumpkins carved into lanterns, casting warm glows across pathways, while vendors bundle against biting winds that scatter leaves in frantic spirals. She hones her awareness further, teaching the boy to recognize safe intervals through patterned knocks on metal surfaces and shared glances that convey volumes without breath, their connection deepening into an intuitive safeguard woven through routine. He emerges from side streets one biting afternoon, collar turned up against gusts, and a fresh tension etching lines across his brow that age him beyond years. Clutching a frayed notebook page inscribed with fragmented pleas rendered in blocky letters, Grace accepts it discreetly while plating his portion of wild rice blended with wild mushrooms and wilted kale, dressed in nutty tahini, her fingers brushing his in reassurance as she tucks the note into her apron for later decoding amid the clatter of serving spoons. Marlene corroborates increased sightings of the prowling duo, their circuits tightening like a noose, with deliberate pauses near peripheral stalls, compelling Grace to log details in encrypted shorthand that blends recipe yields with timestamps for plausible deniability. Culinary creativity surges as coping mechanism, yielding innovations like barley-stuffed cabbage rolls, braised in tomato fennel sauce, that pack dense nutrition for uncertain horizons, bartered spices from Carlos amplifying flavors to mask growing emotional undercurrents. She distributes samples strategically to prolong dwell times around her cart, creating natural screens during vulnerable windows. Javier facilitates a shadowed consult with the counselor via park bench proxy, absorbing protocols for de-escalation that emphasize patience over precipitate action, empowering her to calibrate responses with precision amid surging patron demand for her cold weather comforts. The boy integrates seamlessly, shadowing her through prep tasks like julienning carrots or portioning dough for sage-infused scones, his presence a quiet affirmation that sustains her through ledger balances teetering on razors. Vendors formalize their vigil into unspoken shifts, casual drifts, blocking vantage points, or amplified banter, drowning potential surveillance, their loyalty manifesting in surplus yields pressed into her hands, extra squash from one, honey jars from another, that bolster her stores against climbing overheads like reinforced tarps and thermal gloves. Grace reciprocates through potluck spreads of polenta lasagna layered with bechamel and spinach confit, fostering reciprocity that insulates her operation while sales crest from seasonal buzz, drawing bundled crowds eager for warmth in bowls and bellies alike. Introspection sharpens during transit rides home, parsing his disclosures, hints of slammed doors echoing through thin walls, meager rations doled grudgingly against her capacity to intervene sustainably. Escalation fractures the fragile equilibrium on a slate-gray midday when the adults advance brazenly, one cornering Carlos mid-haggle with pointed queries about frequent young visitors, while the other photographs Grace's setup overtly. The boy halts abruptly at the alley mouth, reversing course until her urgent spoon wrap summons him to concealed stacking behind produce bins. She confronts the photographer with sales feistiness over her latest chickpea tagine with preserved lemon zest, disarming intent through relentless hospitality that forces retreat amid awkward declines. Though adrenaline lingers like acrid smoke post-departure, emergency huddle with core allies yields consensus on alerting authorities indirectly through counselor channels, photos compiled into evidentiary packets that balance urgency with discretion. Grace transforms residual tremors into fortified feasts, crafting lentil shepherd's pie topped with cauliflower mash infused with smoked paprika for grounding heft, portions fortified with hidden vitamins sourced from community donations. She confides evolving patterns to Javier for cross-verification with school networks, uncovering no matches yet, but pathways forward. The boy mirrors her fortitude, volunteering alley sentries during peaks or relaying napkin signals with precocious accuracy, their tandem operation humming with purpose that transcends survival into subtle defiance. Nights yield to strategic planning, mapping escape routes on mental grids while savoring pilfered moments of levity like his tentative giggles at overflowing pots. Cataclysmic rupture arrives under bruised skies when patrol lights converge mid-afternoon rush. Multiple units fanning through stalls with urgent broadcasts seeking a specific youth matching vague descriptors amid welfare checks. The boy materializes pale and panting from a service path, backpack dragging as he collapses behind her counter, whispering frantically about pursuit closing in. Grace enshrouds him in stacked crates, amplifying order calls to drown commotions, while deflecting officer inquiries with adamant claims of solo operations only, her pulse thundering beneath veneer of bustling normalcy as teams comb adjacent booths methodically. Tension peaks when a beam sweeps perilously close, prompting her to shove him deeper into shadows with murmured vows of harbor. Vehicles peel away eventually after fruitless sweeps, residual shock rippling through emptied pathways as vendors resume with feigned nonchalance. Grace unearths the boy trembling yet intact, enveloping him in a spare jacket while ladling restorative miso broth, laced with tofu cubes and scallions for stabilization. Amid hushed aftermath, he unleashes a torrent, unbidden names, surfaces finally as Micah, caregivers unraveling under addictions that twist affection into peril, escapes, escalating to daily imperatives, details cascading that shatter her hesitation into crystalline resolve. She activates counselor protocols forthwith, securing temporary haven arrangements while cradling his exhaustion against her side, their shared exhale marking irreversible pivot. Market response mobilizes instantaneously, pooling funds for immediate necessities and mounting extended watches that fortify perimeter defenses. Carlos inscribes affirmations on donated thermalware. Marlene knits mufflers as talismans of solidarity. Grace navigates emergent bureaucracy with Micah in tow, disguised as helper, platters of roasted vegetable gratins, and quinoa fritters, sustaining allies through prolonged vigils, while her ledger stabilizes via crowdfunding whispers among patrons. Fulfillment wars with fatigue in reflective pauses. His first full sentences queries on herb pairings, now rekindling purpose amid specters of reprisal. Threshold shatters definitively, that tempestuous evening when authoritative knocks echo through her modest dwelling post-closing, social workers materializing with warrants tied to Micah's disclosures. Grace ushers them calmly, presenting compiled dossiers that corroborate narratives, while Micah huddles nearby clutching her apron tail. Assessments unfold methodically, her testimony anchoring bids for emergency custody amid labyrinthine processes, emergent bonds pleading silently for continuity. As gears grind toward resolution, interrogate below what sacrifices define true guardianship for a silenced soul. And does Micah's unleashing herald healing or harder battles? Declare convictions fiercely, your chorus echoes into climax. Grace stands in the dim glow of her apartment's single overhead bulb late into the night. The social worker's pamphlets spread across her narrow kitchen table like a roadmap to uncharted territory, their pages detailing processes for temporary guardianship that she pores over with a highlighter borrowed from Javier's school supplies. The market's day's end lingers in her bones, a residue of ladled portions of creamy polenta swirled with wild mushrooms and drizzled truffle oil that drew record crowds despite the underlying chaos. Proceeds now earmarked for legal fees and Micah's immediate needs, like sturdy boots and layered clothing against encroaching frosts. She glances toward the sofa where he curls under a quilt pieced from vendor donations, his breathing even at last after hours of quiet recounting that peeled back layers of endured isolation. His trust in her, a fragile gift she vows to nurture through bureaucratic mazes. Morning breaks with purposeful motion, Grace rising early, to brew strong coffee infused with cardamom pods and prepare a breakfast spread of fluffy pancakes stacked with macerated berries and whipped yogurt for sustained energy. The aromas coaxing Micah awake with tentative stretches and yawns that reveal glimpses of childhood beneath the guarded veneer. They navigate the short walk to a nearby outreach center together, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder as they dodge puddles from overnight showers, the building's welcoming facade, belying the gravity of interviews ahead where caseworkers probe gently into timelines of absences and signs of neglect. Grace articulates observations with measured clarity patterns of bruises concealed hastily, flinching at overhead announcements. Reliance on her cart as sole reliable nourishment, her voice steady as she advocates for continuity in his fragile stability. Back at the market by midday, operations resume with amplified resolve. Vendors encircling her setup like sentinels, while she unveils a new special of braised short ribs over garlic-mashed parsnips that vanishes swiftly amid murmurs of support, tips flowing into a communal jar labeled innocuously for stall upgrades. Micah shadows her confidently now, portioning sides of honey-roasted Brussels sprouts or refilling napkin dispensers, his presence eliciting smiles from regulars who dub him the official taste tester. Interactions that coax fuller sentences from him about preferences for crispy edges or subtle heat levels. Marlene delivers updates from peripheral watches, confirming the adults' retreat to less frequent orbits, their shadows dimming under mounting scrutiny from filed reports that ripple through systems. Legal wheels turn incrementally throughout the week, with follow-up visits to the center yielding assessments that favor Grace's application for emergency foster placement. Her clean background and documented care-tipping scales against institutional alternatives. She attends orientation sessions, framed as community workshops, absorbing training on trauma-informed responses while juggling shifts where platters of eggplant parmesan layered with fresh mozzarella sustain weary allies. Micah thrives incrementally in the structure, sleeping through nights without alley vigils and experimenting with questions about her cooking origins, his curiosity blooming like spring shoots through cracked pavement. Financial ebbs persist, a surprise tax notice demanding back payments, but vendor crowdfunding bridges gaps, transforming peril into provisional security. Deepened routines foster healing as days stack, Grace introducing evening rituals of shared storytelling over mugs of golden milk spiced with saffron and pistachios, where Micah ventures tales of happier fragments before shadows encroached, his voice gaining timbre and range that fills her modest space with life. Market life pulses with renewed camaraderie. Carlos unveiling a custom spice rack engraved with protective motifs, and Javier organizing supply drives that stock her pantry with staples like arborio rice for risotto specials, infused with saffron and shellfish that draw gourmet crowds. She balances advocacy calls with prep work, documenting milestones, like his first unsolicited joke about oversalted broth, each marker reinforcing bids for permanence amid probationary oversight. Challenges surface in waves, from Micah's nightmares jolting them awake, with muffled cries, to bureaucratic hurdles demanding character references that vendors supply in droves, their letters painting her as pillar of quiet heroism. Grace counters regression with tailored comforts, baking batches of chewy granola bars packed with oats and dark chocolate for school trials once enrollment processes. He adapts to structured days, returning afternoons with sketches now depicting shared meals under sunny skies, pressed into her hands with hugs that linger longer each time. Sales crest from viral whispers among patrons, funding therapy sessions disguised as art classes where he channels memories into vibrant canvases. Pivotal hearings loom after fortnight's span. Grace donning her best blouse for proceedings where advocates present compiled evidence of transformation, from silent specter to engaged companion judges, nodding at testimonials from market allies, attesting to her unwavering provision. Micah testifies softly via video link, his prepared words about feeling seen for the first time, landing with resonant power that sways deliberations toward extended placement with stipends easing her burdens. Celebratory spreads follow verdicts, platters of paella teeming with chorizo and prawns, uniting the network in feasts that echo triumph over adversity. Integration deepens through shared milestones, like his first market assistance during peak hours, where he calls orders with budding confidence, earning applause that blushes his cheeks. Grace enrolls him in after-school programs funded by tips, watching him forge peer bonds over kickball games while she refines menus with his input, spicier glazes now, crispier coatings. Evenings evolve into collaborative prep, chopping sessions yielding laughter over mishaps, like overfilled pots bubbling wildly. Their duo evolving into family facsimile, resilient against residual checks. Vendors toast her perseverance with custom aprons embroidered guardian of the griddle, symbols that anchor her through audits, confirming stability. External validations arrive as media snippets highlight anonymous market miracles, drawing curious influxes that Grace fields with humility while channeling proceeds into community pantries, restocked weekly with her surplus yields. Micah's progress accelerates, homework sessions interspersed with recipe trials like matcha crepes folded around mango compote, his chatter-filling silences once dominated by doubt. Grace reflects during rare solitudes on the alchemy of persistence, her ledger now balanced by purpose beyond profit, doubts dissolved in waves of mutual reliance. The transformative utterance crystallizes one radiant afternoon amid harvest bounty, sunlight gilding stalls as Micah pauses mid-task, turning to her with eyes alight and declaring unequivocally, "You are my home now," the words slicing through years of her solitude to ignite profound purpose that redefines existence from endurance to embrace. Tears blur her vision as she pulls him close. Market cheers erupting spontaneously while pots simmer unattended, the declaration echoing as life's pivot where vendor and wanderer merge destinies indelibly. Before culmination unfolds fully, confess in comments. What phrase from a child's lips could redefine your world? And how does this sanctuary's forging mirror your own acts of unseen grace? Your truths converge toward resolution. Proclaim them passionately. Grace holds Micah close amid the market's spontaneous applause that afternoon, the weight of his declaration settling into her like sunlight piercing long clouds, while pots of saffron risotto bubble softly behind them and vendors clap shoulders in shared victory over the moment's raw beauty. Days stretch into a tentative normalcy thereafter, her mornings filled with the dual symphony of chopping leeks for velvety potato soups and quizzing him gently on multiplication tables borrowed from community center printouts, their partnership blossoming into routines that weave care with structure. She navigates foster oversight visits with quiet confidence, caseworkers noting his brighter demeanor and improved appetite during spot checks that coincide with her specials of herb-crusted cod fillets nestled over lemony couscous. Observations logged favorably toward permanency goals. Micah's world expands incrementally through these anchored hours, afternoons blending market duties, like portioning glazed pearl onions with after-school clubs, where he sketches market scenes for peers who marvel at his detail, returning home with tales that coax laughter from Grace during dinner prep of stuffed portobello mushrooms brimming with quinoa and feta crumbles. Vendors embrace his integration fully, Carlos crafting a pint-sized apron strung with bells for playful alerts, and Marlene teaching him scarf-tying knots that double as secret signals, their circle expanding to include a librarian volunteer who loans picture books that spark bedtime readings under a shared lamp. Sales hold steady from loyal influxes, funding enrollments in art workshops where his pencils capture their duo amid steaming carts, canvases that Grace frames proudly on her walls. Challenges weave through triumphs subtly, from Micah's occasional flinches at raised voices echoing from neighboring units to Grace's weary stretches when double shifts cover therapy, co-pays. Yet, they counter with collaborative rituals, like weekend baking marathons, yielding cinnamon swirl loaves that fill their space with comfort. She enrolls him formally in classes tailored to his pace, mornings dropping him at a nurturing program before market setup, where she unveils rotating comforts such as creamy butternut squash bisque swirled with coconut cream for dipping crusty baguette slices. Evenings bring homework huddles over mugs of turmeric lattices frothy with almond milk, his progress charts marked with stickers he designs himself, each milestone a testament to resilience rebuilt brick by brick. Market evolution mirrors their growth, with management granting her a modest expansion permit after petitions highlighting her role in community stability, allowing a second cart for prep that Micah mans proudly during peaks, calling specials of balsamic glazed figs wrapped in prosciutto to eager lines. Regulars evolve into extended kin, organizing supply swaps that stock her larder with exotics, like finger limes for citrusy salsas over grilled halloumi, their gatherings turning stalls into festive hubs where songs rise amid shared platters. Grace attends parenting seminars framed as vendor trainings, absorbing strategies for nurturing trauma's aftermath that she applies through patient prompts during his quieter spells, fostering emotional literacy one conversation at a time. Micah's voice flourishes in this fertile ground, evolving from sparse disclosures to animated recounts of playground triumphs or recipe tweaks he proposes, like adding smoked paprika to her lentil dal for deeper earthiness that she tests eagerly, their kitchen experiments bonding them through spills and successes alike. Nights yield to storytelling circles with vendor kids, tales of market heroes spun around campfires, crackling in portable pits, his contributions drawing circles tighter as confidence radiates outward. Grace journals these shifts privately, entries blending gratitude lists with future visions of a certified cafe bearing his sketched logo, dreams fueled by stipends and surging patronage that stabilize her footing. External affirmations multiply as local features spotlight their arc anonymously, drawing philanthropists who donate equipment like a commercial blender for velvety smoothies blended with kale and pineapple chunks that Micah perfects daily. He thrives academically too, report cards glowing with praise for focus and creativity, celebrations marked by family-style feasts of paella, simmered with saffron threads and jumbo shrimp that unite their circle under starlit awnings. Doubts that once shadowed her resolve fade entirely, replaced by fulfillment in witnessing his laughter chase away old phantoms. Their home, a sanctuary echoing with purpose rediscovered. Deeper integration arrives through holidays, embraced collectively, vendors pooling for a potluck extravaganza, where Micah unveils a centerpiece cake layered with espresso ganache and raspberry preserves, his pride beaming as forks lift slices amid toasts to enduring bonds. Grace pursues certification quietly, evening classes on business management, dovetailing with advocacy for market policies that protect small operators, her influence rippling outward as peers adopt her resilient models. Micah forges friendships that extend playdates, sleepovers hosted under her watchful expansions, where pancakes stack high with maple butter for dawn feasts. Permanency solidifies after rigorous reviews, judges sealing adoption pathways with commendations for her transformative stewardship, celebrations spilling into market-wide barbecues of slow-smoked brisket sliced over cornbread muffins slathered in honey. Their duo evolves into visible team, signage proclaiming Grace and Micah's hearth meals, drawing lines that snake through stalls, precedes seeding scholarships he eyes for culinary arts down the line. Reflections surface in quiet moments, her heart swelling at his hugs post-school and queries about family recipes from her heritage, threads weaving past pains into tapestries of tomorrow. The utterance's full ripple manifests one crisp dawn as sunlight gilds their prep, Micah pausing to declare earnestly, "You gave me words when silence hurt most," the profundity reshaping her identity from solitary vendor to lifelong anchor, tears mingling with flower dust as they embrace amid rising doze. Market cheers cascade anew, affirming the alchemy where one free bowl ignited destinies entwined forever. Before finale beckons, muse in comments, how might a single act of nourishment rewrite fates? And what echoes from Micah's journey resonate in your path? Share vulnerably your narratives. Complete the circle. Grace watches Micah dash off to school each morning with a backpack now bulging with notebooks and lunch containers packed with fluffy quinoa salads tossed with chickpeas, cucumber chunks, and a zesty tahini lemon dressing that keeps him fueled through lessons and recess games alike. Their apartment transforms gradually into a true home, walls adorned with his evolving artwork, vibrant depictions of market stalls under golden hour light, or steaming pots encircled by smiling figures, while shelves fill with shared treasures like a ceramic mixing bowl they painted. Together during a rainy weekend, its blue swirls mirroring the patterns he once sketched on crumpled paper, she balances expanded duties seamlessly, rising before dawn to prep batches of savory steel-cut oats, simmered with apples, walnuts, and a whisper of maple syrup for their breakfast ritual that starts the day with easy chatter about dreams or daily plans. Market operations flourish under their joint stewardship. The second cart, now a fixture, where Micah handles sides like crispy kale chips, seasoned with sea salt and nutritional yeast, calling them out with a confidence that draws chuckles and extra orders from patrons who marvel at his poise. Vendors celebrate their permanence with custom touches, a hand-painted sign from Carlos, reading Micah's favorites, above the prep station. Marlene's knitted coasters, protecting counters during tea breaks, turning the space into an extension of family, where laughter punctuates the sizzle of pans and clink of utensils. Grace unveils seasonal stars like hearty root vegetable tagine layered with prunes and almonds over fluffy couscous, dishes that vanish swiftly, and fund expansions such as a small freezer for gelato specials, swirled with fresh berry purees. He helps churn on slow afternoons. Micah's academic strides accelerate visibly, parent-teacher conferences yielding glowing feedback on his focus and artistic flair. Moments Grace savors with quiet pride while plating celebratory platters of herb-roasted chicken thighs glazed in pomegranate molasses, served alongside jeweled rice studded with pistachios and barberries. He initiates family outings now, suggesting park picnics where they unpack wraps of grilled halloumi with roasted red peppers and hummus spreads, sprawling on blankets to watch clouds morph while he recounts classroom adventures or proposes menu twists like infusing her marinara with smoked chipotle for depth. Evenings weave education with indulgence. Joint sessions over mugs of hot cocoa frothed with cinnamon and cayenne, where he practices spelling bees. Or she shares heritage stories behind dishes like okra gumbo, thickened with filet powder, bonds deepening through flavors and folklore alike. Community embrace widens into formal alliances, with Grace spearheading a vendor collective advocating for fair fees and youth programs that enroll Micah as junior ambassador. His speeches at meetings charming adults with earnest pleas for market gardens where kids plant herbs destined for her pots. Sales soar from this visibility. Proceed seeding scholarships and a mobile cart for outreach events where they serve restorative bowls of miso ramen brimming with shiitake mushrooms, soft-boiled eggs, and nori flakes to those in need, mirroring the gesture that started their journey. Challenges arise gently: a scraped knee from playground, tumbles treated with her arnica salve, homework slumps met with patient reviews over berry smoothies blended thick, but resilience defines them, turning obstacles into shared stories, retold with humor at dinner tables laden with shepherd's pie, topped with puff pastry stars. Holidays amplify their circle's warmth. Thanksgiving feasts uniting dozens under sprawling tables, bowed under turkey-carved juicy, with cornbread stuffing and cranberry relish, spiked with orange zest. Micah leading Grace with words, thanking free meals that led to family found. Grace pursues formal training through online modules on nutrition and business, certificates framed beside his report cards as testaments to growth, while he experiments boldly in their kitchen lab, fusing peanut sauce with rice noodles, tossed with snap peas and sesame seeds for addictive bowls that debut at market to rave reviews. Nights close with reading rituals, picture books giving way to chapter adventures, where voices animate characters, his questions probing deeper into themes of belonging that echo their arc. External opportunities bloom as features expand into podcast invites, where Grace recounts their saga obliquely, drawing sponsors for premium ingredients like truffle oils, elevating her wild mushroom ragu over polenta cakes that become signature hits. Micah thrives socially too. Sleepovers hosted with structured fun like pizza nights, where dough stretches thin under their hands and toppings layer creatively from pineapple chunks to prosciutto crisps. Mornings dawning to strata baked golden with sausage and spinach folded into egg custard. Reflections fill her journal sporadically. Pages praising his hugs that squeeze tight post-school and imaginative pleas for one more story. Gratitude swelling for the alchemy, where vendor compassion birthed unbreakable kinship. Milestones cascade through seasons. Birthdays marked by tiered cakes frosted smooth with buttercream rosettes and filled with passion fruit curd that he decorates meticulously. Wishes blown amid cheers from their extended tribe. Grace launches a junior cooking class for market kids. Micah as lead assistant, demonstrating knife skills on carrots. Julienned paper thin for spring roll wrappers, dipped in peanut lime sauce. Fostering legacies of generosity in tiny hands. Their home pulses with life, now fridge magnets, holding permission slips, counters scarred from countless creations, every corner whispering permanence, won through persistence. The utterance's enduring power crystallizes during a quiet spring evening as they knead dough for naan brushed with garlic ghee. Micah pausing to affirm softly, "Your food gave me courage to speak my truth," the simplicity rekindling her core mission and affirming destinies intertwined beyond measure. Market lights twinkle approval as they break bread together. Flavors sealing vows unspoken yet eternal. Grace savors the rhythm of their shared mornings, where sunlight slants through kitchen blinds as Micah spreads almond butter thick on whole grain toast, topped with sliced bananas and a drizzle of raw honey that catches the light like liquid gold. Their apartment evolves further into a haven of creativity. Corners dedicated to his art station, stocked with charcoals and watercolors, where he renders portraits of market characters Carlos, with his spice pouches, Marlene mid-stitch hung gallery style to inspire daily prep sessions of chia seed puddings layered with coconut yogurt and granola clusters baked fresh with oats and pecans. She weaves nutrition lessons into routines, explaining fiber benefits while they assemble bento boxes of turkey slices rolled around, cream cheese with cucumber sticks, and hummus dips for his school lunches that return empty each day. Market prominence grows organically as their duo becomes legend, whispered among stalls. The expanded setup, now featuring a chalkboard specials board, scripted in Micah's careful hand, announcing gems like faro bowls, brimming with roasted delicata squash rings, pomegranate arrows, and whipped goat cheese that lure foodies snapping photos for social feeds. Vendors collaborate on theme days, pooling talents for fusion feasts, where Grace's jerk-spiced lentils nestle beside Carlos's curry leaves and Javier's literary trivia contests that award-winning bowls of biryani rice perfumed with cardamom pods, cashews fried crisp. Micah mans the register during peaks with a till that dings triumphantly. His polite exchanges. Enjoy the warmth, boosting tips that fund field trips to urban farms where they harvest greens destined for kale pesto tossed over zucchini noodles. Micah's confidence radiates outward through school achievements, science fair projects on sustainable sourcing, earning blue ribbons displayed proudly beside Grace's vendor awards for community impact, celebrations sealed with homemade tiramisu layered with coffee-soaked ladyfingers and mascarpone clouds dusted in cocoa powder. He pioneers kid-friendly stalls at weekend fairs, grilling mini skewers of marinated tofu glazed in teriyaki reduction for crowds that cheer his poise. Proceeds donated to youth shelters in nods to origins. Evenings blend mentorship with mischief, joint ventures crafting energy balls, rolled in coconut flakes and dipped in dark chocolate that double as study snacks during algebra reviews, punctuated by taste tests and high fives. Grace champions broader initiatives, testifying at city forums for micro-business protections that safeguard market ecosystems. Her eloquence drawing grants for communal kitchens, where Micah leads workshops on knife grips, for peeling mangoes destined for salsa fresca, over fish tacos, battered golden and fried light. Challenges arrive softly, a growth spurt, demanding new clothes, budgeted through coupon clips. Seasonal allergies, eased with nettle teas, steeped strong, met with adaptability that turns trials into teachable tales. Shared over frittatas, folded thick with spinach, feta, and sun-dried tomatoes baked till puffed high. Their bond weathers storms seamlessly, his nightmares rare, now replaced by enthusiastic hugs that lift her spirits through long shifts. Summer festivals amplify their reach, stages, hosting cooking demos where Micah flambés, bananas Foster style in brown sugar, rum sauce, served over vanilla bean ice cream, scooped generous, audiences applauding as flames dance safely under his steady hand. Grace networks with chefs for pop-up collaborations, fusing her stews with their techniques into elevated plates like short rib ragu over handmade pappardelle twirled with shaved pecorino that sell out pre-orders. Home life pulses, with projects of vertical herb garden thriving on their balcony, yielding basil for caprese skewers threaded with mozzarella pearls, and balsamic pearls bursting sweet tart, nurturing self-sufficiency. Alongside affection, Micah's social sphere blooms vibrantly. Birthday bashes, hosted market-side, with piñatas bursting candy and cakes sculpted as steaming carts filled with ganache stew. Friends marveling at his origin story, retold proudly without shadows. Grace pursues wellness certifications, blending them into menus like golden lattes frothed with adaptogens and collagen for post-shift recovery, shared over debriefs of his soccer goals or debate club wins. Reflections grace her journals nightly, pages praising his initiative in sourcing bulk nuts for trail mixes portioned for sales. and the profound joy of tucking him in with forehead kisses amid quiet affirmations of safety eternal. Pivotal growth manifests during a harvest moon gathering where stalls glow lantern-lit. Micah, unveiling a cookbook compiled from their recipes pages, illustrated with his art beside. Instructions for black bean burgers topped with avocado crema and pickled red onions, gifted to allies who pledge shelf space in local shops. Grace beams through tears as he dedicates it to the bowl that broke my silence, the gesture cementing legacies intertwined across generations. The spoken truth's legacy endures one dewy dawn as they harvest balcony tomatoes for bruschetta smeared thick on grilled sourdough, rubbed with garlic cloves. Micah affirming with luminous eyes, "Your kindness planted words in me that grow forever." The wisdom from young lips redefining her purpose into perpetual bloom. Cheers ripple from early risers prepping nearby, sealing their saga in flavors everlasting. Before horizons expand anew, testify below. What seed of compassion yielded your richest harvest? And how does Micah's voice echo in your silence? Your testimonies weave the tapestry, complete. Offer them wholly. Grace wakes up each morning at 5:30 a.m. to start cooking. She makes a big pot of oatmeal with brown sugar, raisins, and a little milk for her and Micah. They eat together at the small kitchen table while he tells her about homework or friends from school. She packs his lunch in a plastic container, usually rice with chicken and vegetables, plus an apple and a granola bar he likes. At the market, they work side by side. Grace cooks the main dishes, like beef stew with carrots and potatoes, or rice with beans and sausage. Micah handles the sides, cutting fruit, filling drink cups, or handing out napkins to customers. He talks to people now and says things like, "The stew is really good today. Try it with extra bread." Customers smile and tip more because they like seeing him help. Micah goes to school every day and gets good grades, especially in art class. He draws pictures of the market and their food cart. Grace puts the best ones on the wall behind the counter. After school, he comes straight to the market and does homework on a stool while she cooks. Sometimes he helps chop onions or stir pots, but only when it's safe. The other vendors treat Micah like family. Carlos gives him free spices to try in recipes. Marlene made him a scarf for cold days. Javier brings books from the school library about cooking or drawing. They all watch out for him and ask how school went. When Grace has a busy day, they make sure Micah eats lunch. Money is better now because more people come to their stall. Grace got approved to keep the second cart, so they serve twice as much food. She pays all the bills on time and even saved enough to buy a new jacket for Micah when winter comes. They still get checks from the foster program, which helps with school clothes and supplies. Micah sleeps well at night in his own bed. No more nightmares about running away or hiding. Grace checks on him before bed and says goodnight. Sometimes he asks questions about when he first came to the market. She tells him the truth that she saw he was hungry and scared, so she fed him every day until he felt safe. One afternoon, while they clean up after a busy lunch, Micah stops and looks at her. "Grace, your food made me brave enough to talk again. That's why I'm here now." She hugs him tight. The other vendors clap and cheer. Everyone knows that one free meal started everything. They go home tired but happy. Grace makes simple chicken soup with noodles for dinner. They eat, talk about the day, and watch a little TV before bed. Life feels normal and good. Before we finish the story, tell me in the comments, what would you do if you saw a quiet kid like Micah at your door every day? Would you feed him? Grace and Micah settle into a routine that feels solid after months of uncertainty. Every weekday starts the same way. She sets her alarm for 5 a.m. and gets up quietly so he can sleep longer. In the kitchen, she boils water for coffee and starts chopping vegetables for the day's soup. Carrots, celery, and onions go into a big pot with chicken broth she made the night before. The smell fills the apartment and wakes Micah naturally around 6:30 a.m. He comes out in his pajamas, rubs his eyes, and sits at the table. Grace pours him a bowl of oatmeal with sliced bananas and a spoonful of peanut butter. They talk about his dreams or what he wants to learn in school that day. No rush, just easy conversation over breakfast. She packs his school bag while he eats. Lunch is always simple, but filling a turkey sandwich on whole wheat bread with lettuce, tomato, and mustard, plus carrot sticks, a yogurt cup, and 2 cookies she baked fresh. Micah zips the bag and grabs his jacket. They walk to the bus stop together, holding hands when no one is looking, because he still likes that sometimes. The bus comes on time, and he waves from the window as it pulls away. Grace watches until it's gone, then heads to the market to set up. The market opens at 10 a.m. sharp. Grace arrives early to fire up the burners and arrange her tables. She has 2 carts now, one for hot meals like chili with ground beef, kidney beans, and just the right amount of spice, and another for sides like coleslaw, cornbread muffins, or fresh fruit cups. Micah gets off school at 3 p.m. and takes the bus straight there. He changes into an old t-shirt to help, wiping counters, refilling sauce bottles, or greeting customers with a big smile. "The chili is hot and ready," he says. Or, "Want some cornbread with that?" People love him. They ask his name and tell him he's growing fast. Tips go into a jar marked Micah's College Fund. Other vendors keep an eye on things. Carlos from the spice stall gives Micah a small bag of cinnamon or paprika to try in recipes. "Sprinkle a little in the chili next time," he says. Marlene sells scarves and hats nearby and slips Micah a new one every few weeks. Javier, the teacher, stops by after school with a new book, sometimes about history, sometimes about drawing cartoons. They all know Micah's story without Grace saying much. They protected him back when strangers lurked around, and now they celebrate his progress. On slow days, they share coffee from a big thermos and talk about weather or sports. Money flows steadier than before. Grace tracks everything in a notebook: sales, bills, savings. The extra cart brings in double the customers, especially office workers who grab lunch to go. She pays rent on time, covers Micah's school fees, and buys groceries without counting pennies. Once a month, she takes him shopping for new sneakers or jeans. The foster checks still come, but she saves most of it for his future. No debt, no worries about the market closing. Life feels predictable in the best way. Micah opens up more at home. After dinner, maybe pasta with meat sauce and garlic bread, they sit on the couch. He talks about school friends, a test he aced, or a drawing he made. Grace listens and asks questions. "What made you draw that?" Or, "How did your team do in the gym?" Bedtime is 9 p.m. She reads a chapter from his book or just talks until his eyes get heavy. No more waking up scared. He sleeps through the night. One Saturday, after a long week, they clean the carts together. Micah wipes down the grill while Grace scrubs pots. He stops, looks at her, and says clear as day, "Grace, you fed me when I was too scared to ask. That made me strong enough to tell my story." She puts down the sponge and hugs him. A few customers still clap. Carlos yells, "That's our boy!" Everyone feels the moment. That free food wasn't just a meal. It changed 2 lives. They finish cleaning, lock up, and walk home. Grace makes hot chocolate with marshmallows. They sip it slowly and plan the next day. Before the end, comment below. Have you ever helped a stranger who needed it? What happened next? Grace and Micah mark their 1-year anniversary together with a quiet dinner at home after a busy market day. She cooks his favorite meal, fried chicken thighs crispy on the outside with juicy meat inside, mashed potatoes whipped smooth with butter and cream, green beans cooked with bacon bits, and fresh biscuits warm from the oven. They sit at their kitchen table now covered with a checkered cloth she bought, special for the occasion. Micah blows out a single candle on a chocolate cake she baked that morning, layers of rich frosting between moist cake. He grins and says, "Best year ever." Grace nods, her eyes a little wet because she feels the same way. School keeps Micah busy during the week. He rides the bus each morning with his backpack full of books and supplies. Teachers send home good reports, straight A's in math and art, B's in everything else. He joined the soccer team this fall and scores goals in almost every game. Grace goes to every match she can, standing on the sidelines with a thermos of hot tea, cheering when he runs fast down the field. After games, they stop for ice cream cones, vanilla for her, chocolate chip for him, and he tells her all about the plays while they walk home slowly. The market stall runs smoothly as clockwork. Grace handles the cooking. Big pots of vegetable soup with barley and herbs on Mondays, spaghetti with meatballs on Tuesdays, tacos with seasoned ground beef, and all the fixings on Wednesdays. Customers line up early because they know the food tastes homemade. Micah works the afternoon shift after school. He takes orders, makes change, and keeps the napkin holder full. People ask for him by name now. "Where's Micah?" He always gives me extra salsa. He laughs and says, "Coming right up." On weekends, he works full days and they split all the tips fairly. Vendors stay close, like always. Carlos teaches Micah how to blend his own spice mix: cumin, garlic powder, a touch of cayenne for rubbing on chicken before grilling. They test it together and sell it as Micah's special rub in small bags. Marlene knits him a new hat each season, blue this winter to match his eyes. Javier brings puzzles or board games for slow afternoons, and they all play together during breaks. When Grace twists her ankle one rainy day, they cover her shifts so she can rest. No one lets the other down. Money adds up steadily. Grace opened a savings account just for Micah's college. Between market sales, foster payments, and his soccer snack sales, he makes popcorn bags with caramel drizzle. They put away $200 a month. She bought a used car last spring, a reliable blue sedan for driving to games and doctor visits. No more squeezing onto buses with heavy pots. Bills get paid first, then groceries, then savings. They even take a day trip to the beach once, building sand castles and eating fish sandwiches from a picnic basket. Micah talks open about his past now, not all at once, but in pieces. Over dinner one night, roast pork with applesauce and rice, he says, "I remember hiding behind your cart that first week. I was so hungry, but too afraid to beg." Grace puts down her fork and listens. "You gave me food anyway. That made me trust you." She reaches for his hand. "You were brave to keep coming back." These talks make them closer. No secrets. One busy Friday after closing, while they count cash under the market lights, Micah looks up from the money box. "Grace, that first day you fed me changed my whole life. I wouldn't be here without it." She stops counting and pulls him into a hug. Carlos walks by and says, "We all saw it happen." Customers still nod and smile. The moment feels big, but simple. They drive home in the blue car, radio playing soft. Grace makes grilled cheese sandwiches with tomato soup for a late snack. They eat on the couch, feet up, planning soccer practice tomorrow. Life stays good, day by day. Before we wrap up, comment this. What's one kind thing you did that made a real difference? Share your story. Grace and Micah hit their 2-year mark with a bigger celebration this time. The market vendors throw a surprise party after closing. Tables line up under the main awning with lights strung across. Grace grills burgers, thick beef patties with cheddar melting on sesame buns, topped with lettuce, tomato, pickles, and her special sauce made from mayo, ketchup, and spices. Sides include potato salad, creamy with mustard dressing, baked beans, sweet and smoky, and watermelon slices chilled cold. Carlos brings his famous spice cake layered high with cream cheese frosting. Everyone eats, laughs, and tells stories about the early days. Micah turned 11 last month. He's taller now, almost as high as Grace's shoulder. School goes great. He's top of his class in math and science. Teachers say he explains things clear, like when he did a project on how food markets work, using their stall as example. He quit soccer for track team because he likes running fast. Grace times him at practices and packs water bottles with lemon slices and sports drinks. Wins get celebrated with pizza nights, pepperoni, mushrooms, and extra cheese loaded heavy. The stalls expanded again. Grace got permission for a third cart serving breakfast items. Mornings start with scrambled eggs, fluffy with cheese, bacon crispy on the side, pancakes stacked 3 high with syrup, and coffee strong for workers. Micah handles breakfast rush before school, flipping pancakes or pouring juice. Afternoons stay the same: chili, tacos, ribs, slow-cooked tender. They hire a helper named Rosa, an older lady from another stall, for peak hours. She chops veggies while they serve. Sales double from 2 years ago. Grace bought a bigger apartment last year, 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen with double ovens, no more cramped space. Vendors remain family. Carlos retired but visits daily, teaching Micah advanced rubs for ribs, paprika, brown sugar, garlic salt, mixed perfect. Marlene sells less now, but knits blankets for Micah's room. Javier moved to principal, but sends books and checks homework when he stops by. They had a group barbecue last month: hot dogs, ribs, coleslaw piled high. Talked about starting a market fund for kids like Micah. Money sits comfortable. Savings hit $10,000 for college. Grace drives the blue car, still running good. They vacationed at a lake cabin this summer. Fishing, swimming, s'mores over campfire with graham crackers, chocolate, marshmallows, toasted, golden. Micah caught 3 fish. Grace fried them fresh with cornmeal crust. Micah shares more memories now. Over meatloaf with gravy and mashed potatoes one night, he says, "I remember counting 3 coins that first day. Not enough for anything. You gave me a full plate anyway." Grace smiles. "Saw the hunger in your eyes." He nods. "Made me come back." Then I felt safe to talk. These talks happen regular, building trust deeper. Closing time on their anniversary, after cake and hugs, Micah pulls Grace aside by the grill. "Your food didn't just fill my stomach. It gave me a mom and a home. Thank you." She hugs him long. Vendors cheer loud. Carlos wipes his eyes. That moment sums it all. The free meal that started everything led here. They pack up slow, drive home happy. Grace makes bedtime cocoa. They sit close, looking at old photos from the market. Life built steady from one act of kindness. What happens when kindness changes lives? Drop your thoughts and comments. Your story could inspire someone. Grace started with one small act, giving free food to a quiet boy who showed up hungry at her market stall every day. She didn't know his name or story, just saw the need in his eyes and filled a container with rice, stew, and plantain. That choice led to everything. Micah was scared and silent back then, hiding from hard things at home. Day by day, her steady kindness built trust. He started helping at the stall, talking more, going to school. Vendors watched out for them both. Challenges came, strangers looking for him, money tight, long days, but they faced it together. Years later, they run 3 carts at the market. Micah's 11, tall and confident, top of his class. On the track team, he takes orders, flips pancakes, even makes his own spice rubs. Grace saved enough for his college. They have a bigger apartment, a car, and family vacations. Vendors are like relatives. Carlos teaches recipes, Marlene knits hats, Javier brings books. One night after 2 years together, Micah hugged her and said clearly, "Your food gave me a mom and a home." Simple words, but they sum it up. One free plate changed 2 lives. What started as hunger ended in family. Kindness like Grace's shows up every day. See it, act on it. You might change your life too.